Morning from Chicago. My name is Richard Miller, and you're welcome as always to Never Not Here. And many of you might know what we're doing. We're always talking away, and somehow, I guess it can be addictive just to talk with another person and just have a heart-to-heart, or just really try to share your life. And I don't know, maybe we can even discuss today that whether it's getting us anywhere or whether it's really all that important. It does seem very alluring and enticing, and you kind of got my number that I really like it. One time I proposed on the website that we run 40 hours a week and just make a job out of it, but nobody came up to pay us. So today we're in London and we're talking to Graham Pritchard. So Graham, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Richard, and it's lovely to be on your most excellent show.
The real fun part about it is the Skype part, or the webcasting and so on, because then space doesn't have all that importance, and people from many nations that we've heard about, of course, but we've never been there. Perhaps I have been to England, but anyhow, we find out that they're pretty much like us, and that's already a big breakthrough. And so it's pretty amazing.
So how are things in Chicago, Richard, at the moment?
We're looking to a big gardening season.
Okay.
Digging in the dirt and stuff. Not quite yet, but we're going to put a few seeds in on Saturday.
Gardening's great, isn't it? Not that I do a lot of it. My girlfriend does all the gardening, and I just watch the flowers appear.
Yeah. We're always trying for produce, so we're trying to beat this.
Oh, brilliant.
The organic system, we're studying the organic system. We're trying to beat Monsanto, although maybe we're buying our seeds from them. I don't know.
Right. My brother does gardening in Chiselhurst, and he lives with my mum, and my dad passed away a couple of years ago. And my brother took over the garden, and he's now got this spirit of gardening in him. He is the gardener, and it's amazing. He grows these super vegetables, and they're just enormous. They're absolutely enormous, and everything you can think of, he grows: chilies, aubergines, potatoes, huge cauliflowers,
Yeah, we had a good aubergine crop last year, and we call them eggplants.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So here we are, we're talking about life, and and sometimes it sounds like we're talking about a new way of living or something, or I don't know, maybe we're talking about a new way of putting our attention. That's one tool we seem to have as human beings, that we can move our attention around. A lot of times it just goes to a loud noise or something shaking in the bushes. That's kind of more primitive, I suppose, where your attention just goes by itself. And often, I guess, our attention goes by itself too, but it doesn't always go on something that's here. It goes on an idea about something that's here, or an idea about how to get a better tomorrow.
Right.
So then we have that tool. We can steer, or it seems we can steer, or can we? Can we steer it? Or, what's the use of it?
Right.
These are probably the questions that we're asking. What can we do? So then we're saying that somehow our attention goes left and sometimes it goes right.
Yeah.
Do we have anything to do with that?
Well, sometimes it seems like everything is just happening. And other times it seems that there's a subtle choosing going on, and sometimes I think we choose with great speed, and it's so fast we don't necessarily catch it.
Almost instinctive, you mean?
Yeah. Instinctive, yeah. So very fast. And so that could look as if everything is just happening with no chooser, or it may be that we're making rapid choices very quickly, very, very quickly, and we're not perhaps perceiving that. And so it seems as if everything is just happening. However, you just scratched your face there and did this, and I did this with my right hand, and it seemed as if I had no choice in it. It seemed as if that just happened.
Right. Okay. Let me get a little more clear. Because I said instinctive, and that sounds like it's natural and it's part of the species, and God gave it to us. But really,
Right.
what I meant to say was it's subconscious, and so then it's not necessarily anything that belongs to me as a human being, but maybe it's just some kind of a conditioning, and I've somehow repressed it or allowed it to run without paying attention to it, and therefore it's quote unquote unconscious or subconscious, and so then it seems like I didn't make a choice, but actually I made a choice a long time ago to always do this in a certain condition, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm not talking about scratching my face. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I scratch my face always when it itches.
Right. And I'm interested does the scratching happen as a choice? Did you choose to scratch your face? Or did the itching happen and the hand move over? Or did I say, like, to myself, I'm going to deliberately scratch my face now?
Okay, well, I mean, I think that's a good example, because whenever you can put something in the programming and change it, then it seems like there's some choice. Okay, let's say there's something that itches on your face, but it's kind of like a wound. And
yes.
you've told yourself, don't scratch your face, because you'll be opening the wound again, right? And so then you actually know that you're not, you might even put your hand up close, and then no, you turn around and say, uh-oh, I know I won't like that when I do that. And so then you're able to change gears there, so there must be some modicum of choice.
Yeah. It would seem to be. I'm interested in these subtle movements we make there, the little movements that we make. Like I just made a couple of movements with my hand. And I'm interested in looking at that to see how much control one really has. I mean, there's that teaching which says everything is just happening. There's no doer, actions are done, thinking happens with no thinker.
I don't think that's a very good teaching, It might be
Right.
It might be the straight truth, but I think that would be better left to discovery. Because when you try to wrap your brain around that, it just doesn't compute too well, or otherwise it causes more hindrance or harm.
It can do, and
Yeah.
your brain melts, and
Whatever,
I mean,
but I mean, you go farther away instead of closer. But here's one
okay.
for you. I'll explain. I'll say this, and it's I notice it in my body all the time. There's a lot of tension.
Yeah.
And so at that tension, and the tension is not universal over the whole body, but it's like here and there, and
Yeah.
maybe I got shoulders or necks or I don't know, whatever it is. And so then, I mean, somehow the natural flow of energy hits that tension, I say. Sometimes it comes out of my hands, I want to just throw out energy, I can feel it in here. And it could be kind of radical, I usually don't show off in public like that. But I mean, in private, sometimes energy is flying out of me and I'm screaming. Or, maybe hit my hands together or something like that. And so then the tension-based or stress-based society we live in makes a lot of movements, and our body's trying to adapt to that tension and somehow live with it and flow and be in the flow with it. And there's a lot of hiccups there. Now, I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm very interested in that. I mean, my main job is teaching Tai Chi, and my other job is a sports massage therapist. And in Tai Chi, we have various tests to test one's level of relaxation. One could think that one is relaxed. One can say one is relaxed. But very often we're not. So we're very interested in this kind of thing, this kind of tension. Where is it coming from? How am I creating this? And why am I creating this? When I can, I can hold my shoulders up high, but why am I doing that? Why not just let the shoulders go? But even having some awareness of it, I mean, my shoulders are tight. And so we do exercises where we'll hold the shoulder and perhaps move the shoulder about, or we do push hands sensitivity training. We can all say, we can easily talk about things like enlightenment and freedom and all this kind of stuff. But so much is recorded in our body of what we're really about. I think I do a lot of body work. I've been a therapist since I qualified in 97. I've been practicing therapist since 1998. So I do a lot of body work. And it's very revealing what the body has to say. The mind might say one thing, but the body very often will say something different. Sometimes the mind of an athlete will say, give me some deep treatment on my quadriceps. But the quadriceps might say, no, I don't need this. I need to have gentle work. And so we can see this war that is going on in us, the mind saying one thing and the body saying another, as it were.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's very revealing because you are looking at it from both sides. So when you do Tai Chi, you can feel that there's not a smooth movement. And then you're also able to touch people and feel what's going on.
Yeah.
And I don't do body work, but sometimes people say rub my shoulders, something like that. And I know that very gentle work is the most really successful because what you're doing is you're inviting the body to open and come out.
Yeah.
Just come out to this gentleness or this, actually hover over it, and just come out.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity for that person to actually open. Whereas the other one is just like, I don't know, doing the laundry or something like that. And it feels good maybe, but somehow it doesn't elicit participation.
So sometimes the body requires deep work. I mean, I had a knee problem and I went to see a friend of mine who worked on my knee and it was so painful, I almost cried during the session. But in one session, it was completely free. He completely freed me up. And my belief is that if he hadn't have done that, I might have been stuck with it for life. So it seems to me that sometimes there's a deep pain we have to go through, very conscious pain. But very much what you're saying, I agree with, that a lot of the time it's just very gentle work, encouraging the body to do its own thing, inviting the body to open up and release, to let go, enticing the body in that direction, working with it rather than fighting against it.
Right.
But I think we're so used to fighting against. I mean, the whole idea with Tai Chi, the martial arts side of Tai Chi, is not opposing. So there's only one person in the fight, really. There's not two people. But that's very, very difficult to do because we're so used to being competitive, so used to having a sense of separation.
There's so much to say about all of these things. Really, this is really, really a great conversation. That I can go several ways. Let's see. Competition. I heard this, or I thought of this lately. That just because we're given a model as a child to be like that, which is outside of us. Just education has got a curriculum, and we're supposed to conform to the curriculum. And that model is actually the root of all competition and all and all separation and all belittling other people. Somehow that because we've been taken outside of ourselves and say, look at this, you could be like Johnny.
Yeah. And from an early age, I mean, I used to read Marvel superhero comics as a kid, and I've always loved the superhero kind of guy. And that's been the case in my spiritual life as well, struggling to be the superhero, super enlightened, Mr. Invulnerable.
What happens when you say that is it sounds like this is an unjust place and the superhero is going to fix it. He's going to make the justice. And so then it's a justice thing to love a hero. Because I I'm not satisfied with how I live, and so I need somebody to come and fix it for me.
And in a sense, it's been. I still love superheroes. You know, I still love Spider-Man and stuff. And you know, Ramana Maharshi, the superhero in his pants. You know, and these are spiritual superheroes, aren't they? I mean, we have this image of Ramana Maharshi. You know, this guy, this classic photo, this black and white photo, this man looking actually quite vulnerable in a sense. And we have other photos of these gurus, in a sense, looking pretty crazy and perhaps really disturbed. And these become our superheroes.
Now that's an amazing one. That's amazing because you can have a hero of vulnerability, and really maybe vulnerability is a good is something you can let in, because when you start to feel, you can, and when you stop feeling, let's say, you stop the bad parts, but you stop all the good parts too.
Well, I can remember one very current, famous spiritual teacher now who appears to be very confident now, and I first saw him in Glastonbury live, and he was so heartbreakingly vulnerable, and it was so beautiful, and people's egos just kind of dropped. It was like a shattering of our pretense beholding that. And I said to my girlfriend at the time, Kathy, we've seen the Blessed One. We've just seen the Blessed One. If you see the same teacher now, he seems somewhat different, more confident, more able to deal with this. He was, thrown in at the deep end. But there was something very blessed. And I remember one lady in the audience, she called herself a spiritual healer, and she had some title she gave herself. She renounced it on the spot. She stood up and said, after seeing this guy, she said, look, this is just phony, I renounce this. And it was a man bleeding before us. In a sense, perhaps I'm being a bit too poetic, but yes, very, very lovely. And I think so much of the time, you and I, and I know I do, and spiritual teachers, I believe, are also doing it to their detriment, which is covering up the vulnerability, putting some disguise on, some superhero mask, or some superhero costume, or some superhero title, particularly an Indian title. And it may be that this is a loss of something, and the loss of this humanity. And I think we suffer because of that. When I put on this superhero costume and become Mr. Super Tai Chi guy or whatever it is, or Mr. Satsang guy or whatever it is, then perhaps I'll start to lose contact with my humanity then. And perhaps this is the beginning of the end. And so many spiritual teachers, in my view, suffer a lot with anxiety and a lot of depression and problems. And perhaps a part of that is the hiding behind that superhero mask. And perhaps it's time just to come out now and to say, look, we're just vulnerable human beings, and we love God, and God is coming through us, and but it's excruciating sometimes.
Okay, I've got to take on that. I don't know. It's kind of funny, but I'll explain it. I'll explain it. I was doing some editing of an old tape, and this one guy, he was saying one thing that really is healing is beauty.
Absolutely.
Beauty is healing. And it just came to me in a flash that what beauty is just not knowing. Because a flower, you can't know a flower, you can't know a sunset. And actually everything is totally amazing. Everything that goes before your gaze is totally amazing. But when you say, I know it, I mean, if you're, okay, look at art, and we know it's an acrylic, we know it's on canvas, we know it's done with brushes, but we really don't know it because we don't know the art, we don't know what it is. And we can say, okay, that's a beautiful painting. And mostly when you're in college, they do art history, and then you analyze and pick apart and describe and know something, and then it's not really beautiful anymore. It's just like, oh, that's when they learned how to do.
Yeah.
how they learned how to do perspective or something like that.
Yeah.
And so,
I know.
go ahead.
I know guys who make crop circles, right? Yeah, they're crop circle artists, and they make the most incredible designs. I don't know if you've seen them, Richard. The latest crop circle designs, they're off the head, and they're spectacular. They do it in the dark of night over 3 or 4 hours. And these people's art just blows people away. But when people feel they find out it's humans, they just disregard it. Oh, this is just human beings. This is not really aliens at all. I'm not so interested now. And all of a sudden, it seems a bit daft, or it doesn't seem to be so powerful or interesting anymore. But their art has a real impact upon the consciousness, and I think it's a fantastic thing. But going back to the not knowing, my girlfriend asked me to move some bags today out the back, and we had some bags full of kind of greenery to put out for the bin men. And I moved it, and there was these worms underneath. And I thought of this idea, we're all God, man. Yeah, I'm God. And I look at this worm, and the idea that I created this worm, it's kind of ludicrous. I haven't got a clue what anything is. I'm watching this incredible creation, this worm going away. I haven't got the slightest idea what anything is. We call it a worm, of course.
Right.
What it is, where it came from, how you could create that out of nothing.
So anyhow, I think that's that's a source of beauty, what came to me, and it's also the source of vulnerability, not knowing. And a lot of times we talk about living in the mystery, but somehow we slide into some kind of subtle knowing, and and somehow day to day, okay, this is satsang. These guys are going to ask me questions. I know that I don't know what I'm going to answer, but I always know that an answer comes. So I mean, somehow that person that you referred to, some amount of knowing came to him, and the vulnerability is not so apparent anymore. And maybe only vulnerability would come in a stressful situation, an accident or something like that, and he would say, right, there's no knowing here.
Or perhaps you become used to it. You become used to playing the role then. You become more familiar with what to do, and perhaps start to create a persona to deal with the terror of that screaming vulnerability. So we create a persona.
I want to go somewhere else on that too, because I don't want to say terror or screaming vulnerability, I just want to say natural openness. It comes in and it goes out. And when, I don't know, is there a transparency? Is a better word than vulnerability? Or, let's look at that. Because when you say vulnerable right away to so many people, maybe rightly so, it means I'm going to be hurt. And in order to be spiritually connected, I need to have a lot of pain. And I don't think that's what we mean by vulnerability.
Well, clearly, in terms of this physical body, if you cut it, it bleeds. It's vulnerable to cuts. It's vulnerable to all sorts of things in terms of this physical creature here.
It bleeds and it heals too.
Yeah, it heals. Yeah, that's right. And if you look at all the birds and animals, they're excruciatingly aware of their vulnerability, which is why they're so alert. They're so alert for any predators.
Yeah, now we could, you can call it that they're aware of their vulnerability, but we could just say that they're alive.
They're alive?
They're totally alive.
Right. They no doubt wouldn't call it vulnerability. Oh, I don't know. What would they call it? They wouldn't even know what we're talking about. What are you talking about?
They'd just be alive, that's all.
Come on.
It's just life,
Come on, get in. Get in the pool.
Yeah, join us,
Yeah. There are worms out here, for goodness sake.
No, listen to this. Now, how many people have told you that they've just approached animals totally innocently, with the same life, and that the animal just came up and ate out of their hand or said, hey, brother, you're my brother, and they weren't scared of a human.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've also seen the opposite, where some guy comes into the bear compound.
And he's
And he shakes
mauled, huh?
hands with the bear. He
Yeah,
shakes hands with the bear, and the bear just rips his arm off.
could be. I I had an experience at a London zoo, a long time ago, where there was this big lion in a cage, and I can't remember if the cage had bars where he could fit his paw out or not. And so then there was a chain outside of that cage, that keep everyone away. And there was a little boy that was crying and pouting and mad at his mother, and he took his shoes off and threw them in that section there,
Right.
And so then the lion was sleeping. It was just laying there, kind of, his head was farther away from that side. And so I thought, oh, well, what the hell? So I climbed over the fence. I mean, it was just a chain, I just stepped over. And I bent, I bent, not in the lion's cage, but in the ring around the lion's cage, like a moat, and he was sleeping there, just laid out, flies were buzzing around. And I picked up the shoe, and as I went up, his face was right in front of me. Like, silently, he had leaped up.
Wow.
And I don't remember, my heart stopped. Like, I don't remember if there was a grid over there where he couldn't get his paw out, or whether he could actually have grabbed me. I can't remember that part.
Wow.
And everybody out there, like, their hearts dropped, like they couldn't believe it, and
a friend of mine, I have an Indian friend who, when he was living in India as a child, his father would be called in if there was any man-eating tigers in the vicinity and they'd killed somebody. And his job was to go out and find the tiger and kill it. And my friend Mickey would go with his dad, and his mum would be at the back, keeping guard at the back. And he said that was when he first fell in love with his mum, when he saw her with a rifle in her hand. And anyway, he told me that you can pass a black panther and you don't know of his existence at all. The only time when you know it's there is when it's too late.
Oh, yeah? So another animal's lucky they can smell him, right?
Yeah.
They can smell his breath or something like that.
Yes.
Let me go back to another part of our conversation, because it's really interesting to me about body work, and also about the set that our body takes. And many people talk about cellular memory.
Yeah.
And there seems to be something, because we have the 10 spots in our body always in the same place. In fact, it might even move, like our whole structure changes. And I used to make this metaphor that, okay, there's a huge community and everybody's cooperating. And to make this community go, and it turns out actually there's 80 billion entities that are living in this community, our body, of course, and the entities are the cells. And there's one radio station, and it's our thoughts, and that radio station is constantly blaring, oh, it's dangerous here. Oh my God, I can't pay the rent. Oh, we don't have any money. Oh, this guy hates me. And the radio station is constantly giving these messages of terror. It's just our thought pattern. And so naturally, everybody's working under kind of tight conditions, and they're all kind of like scared. And somehow they're still making it work. But the moment that radio station shifts channels, everybody lets go and just opens up. And I wonder, sometimes it seems that it's that fast. Something can happen in your life, and then all of a sudden, poof, there's just a total relaxation, and everything lets go,
Right.
I mean, you could call it a spiritual experience. And so then, what's the cellular memory? It's really not there. It's just that we keep sending the same nervous messages to our body, and
right. Two doctors known as Travall and Simmons did a 50-year study on parts of the body which they call trigger points. And a trigger point is a pea-sized nodule in the body, which is hypersensitive. It is a place of recoil, of tightness, and it refers pain to various other parts of the body. And they worked on trigger points. I work on trigger points. They used acupuncture needles to pierce them, to release them. And their conclusion after 50 years study was that I think it's something like, I hope I'm not exaggerating, but I think it's something like 60 to 70% of all pain in the body, human body, is located in these trigger points. These places of cellular memory, these places of habitual recoil. One particular area which I work on a lot is known as psoas, P-S-O-A-S. It's one of the hip flexors. And psoas stores emotional energy. And you can feel it. And I guess the hands of a therapist can get quite sensitive to stuff. And you can feel all sorts of emotion in there, particularly with guys. Guys tend to have build up a lot of anger in psoas. And so you can release a lot of stuff by working in psoas. It's a very interesting area. And certainly as a body worker, it's completely obvious that the pain is stored in certain areas, memories are stored in certain areas. And I guess part of that work is releasing it, which is why a lot of people, perhaps some people enjoy that because they're going through a process. Others recoil from it because they don't want to release that. It took me 7 to, I think, about 8 years as a therapist. About my 8th year, I realized not everybody wants to be healed. A lot of us are just holding on so much. It confirms our identity. And so not everybody wants to be healed of these trigger points. And very often, if you release a trigger point off, very quickly, the body, within a day or so or quicker, will bring it back, will remember, oh yes, and will retighten that area for whatever reason. And of course, it comes from here, must come from the mind and habits and ways of thinking.
The mind, yeah, ways of thinking, belief structures.
Yes.
You know.
And or perhaps also the belief that you need to suffer. That suffering is somehow part of the picture, and suffering is a requirement.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, that would really be something to do a 50-year study or anything, you know. I
yeah.
mean, you are doing a study on it because you're looking, you know, you have intimate access to that and to see what happens.
I do, and the way things are moving in the therapy world, like with physiotherapists and things, they move away from the patient. They don't seem to, no disrespect to physios, by the way, I think they're doing a fantastic job, but they're moving away to not actually touching people. So they give them lots of exercises to do, which is always a fantastic thing because it can help the person be proactive in their own recovery. But by not touching the person, I think you're missing out on a lot of sensory information that you can only receive with your hands and things. There's one thing looking at a person, their gait, how they walk, or listening to the tone of their voice, etc. But it brings in another dimension, doesn't it? The dimension of touch. If you think of early healing, like in the Bible, it was hands-on, putting hands on people, touching people. And this is probably an area we're all, well, we know we're all kind of longing to be touched, and we long to touch other people. And this is what we're doing now, Richard, isn't it? This is a form of touching, in a sense. We're reaching out to each other.
Absolutely.
Because we don't want to feel alone in this void. We're reaching out and saying, look, we're discovering something incredible here. We're trying to give it voice. And we're reaching out and saying, look, in the midst of all this media madness, we're reaching out and saying there's something else here. There's something else going on. And for us, it's much more important. There's a different rhythm we want to share than the rhythm of the world, which is frantic. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. We must be panicking and running as fast as we can to get nowhere. We're sensing there's a different rhythm. And that rhythm from the earth, it doesn't say that there's something wrong. It seems to me that the earth isn't telling me that there's something wrong. Barry Long used to say, you know, that there's the world which we have created upon the earth, but underneath the world is the earth, and the earth to me, it's saying something different. I know a lot of environmentalists are saying the Earth is dying and all this and that, but to me, I don't, I don't hear that. I don't sense that's the case. I even sense that it's all right, that things are really all right. And I know things aren't all right in the world, that terrible things are happening. I wouldn't deny that, and it would be heartless to deny that. But underneath that, there's a sense that things are all right. And I hear it in the blackbird. When he was talking the other night, I heard it in the blackbird's sermon. Things are all right on planet Earth.
I often used to say that, like I went to the Grand Canyon several times, and I was really impressed by that. But you got 1 mile deep. And so then rocks are sedimentary, and there's layers,
Yeah.
And then you can start looking at a layer and say, oh, look, this was humanity here. And you think, oh my God.
Wow.
Are we really important? We're so arrogant to think that we're changing the world, I mean, that's really a good one way to look at it.
I think so. I think you're right. And it seems to me like when these awful things happen for these poor Japanese people, and total sympathy with the poor souls, it seems like we're just microbes. And the Earth adjusts itself quite impersonally. I don't believe it's a personal judgment of God. I think it's just the Earth doing what the Earth does. And what a windscreen wiper does. And it kills all these bugs. We're not doing it because we hate bugs or it's vengeance against bugs. And each time we do this, we kill colonies, which are living on us.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, one thing is that we shouldn't really anthropomorphize bacteria and stuff like that, because one thing that came to me is that every living being has a mouth.
Right.
And every mouth is hooked to another living being. And if we think that there's some injustice in that, we're totally wrong, totally wrong-headed. And we're just trying to look at things in a way that doesn't exist. And so then, if we're trying to say that gazelles shouldn't be eaten by lions, or shouldn't step on ants, it can't happen. And anyhow, I don't need to make a really biggie out of that one, but.
Well, I was looking in the garden today. We saw these snail shells, these poor snails, eaten by these lovely birds that we love, the blue tits. And I don't know if blue tits eat snails actually, but we eat cows. I eat cows occasionally. I don't kill them myself, but perhaps if I had to kill them myself, perhaps I wouldn't do it. Perhaps I wouldn't eat them. Quite likely, in fact.
Yeah, but, one time we did that, like in America, especially in manhood, the rites of passage or something like that. People want to go out and hunt and fish and stuff like that and see what it's all about. And one time we raised a pig and shot it in the head, and it was not all that great of a deal,
Ah.
But I mean, it was kind of like our rites of passage that we can do this. And
how did you feel?
No good,
Yeah.
Somebody's tracing some, apparently there's a comet or an asteroid that's going to be passing through our solar system.
Okay.
And some people are saying it's quite big, and maybe even trying to call it a dwarf star.
Wow.
And they're saying that it's, if you line it up in certain ways as it's been getting closer and closer, it lines up exactly on the dates of the big earthquakes in Chile and in just this Japanese one and some other ones, and that it's actually going to get way much closer, and it's going to go between Venus and Earth.
Right.
And there's going to probably be a lot of, in other words, that the gravitation is against the plates of the Earth, and that there's going to be some upheavals.
Right.
And that's going to be this fall. So that 2012 couldn't wait. We couldn't wait for 2012. We're going to do it in 2011. So maybe we'll really get together, as a humanity trying to help each other this fall. But I don't know if it's true or not.
Right. I was thinking the other day that these are really ordinary times. They're extraordinary in terms that you and I can speak on Skype and the extraordinary sophistication of technology. But in terms of earthquakes and comets and meteorites and tsunamis and wars, they're very ordinary times. And from time immemorial, people have had their 2012. They've been looking for the Messiah to come next year. And they've had their messiahs and they've been and gone. And it just struck me that it's just a thought that perhaps just these are truly ordinary, ordinary times. We live in truly ordinary times.
Mm. I something was coming to me before when you were saying that that perhaps the earth is all right. The
Right.
earth is well. And I was thinking that some people might just take your refuge in that thought and kind of
Right.
split off from involving. And they say,
Okay.
and I'm better off just to isolate myself and ignore what's going on. And somehow,
Yeah.
I'm not so
Yeah.
sure that's, well, I guess, in everybody's life, there's a time of going out and there's a time of staying in.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I think we can use all these ideas to not participate in things, and but some people are called, aren't they? Their calling is to go out into the world and evangelize, and they feel their calling is to go to evangelize in some foreign country to spread the good news, as it were. And others feel their call is they feel they have a very clear picture of what is happening in the world, and they feel, based upon scientific evidence, that things are really falling apart, and they feel a call to action. The chaps across the road from the Salvation Army, and of course the Salvation Army was about, William Booth was about, this problem with alcoholism in our society, and so his calling was to try and help in that area, and not to encourage people to drink and things. And I suppose some people are very, very active in change, in going out. Others, their way of changing the world perhaps is to retreat into a cave, or to pray, to go to a monastery. I spent some time with some Benedictine monks, and they really believe that by what they're doing, they're helping the world, they're aiding the world by just 7 times a day praying and having a very sincere silence. And their silence is incredible. I spent some time with them, and it was a pretty awesome place, So I guess we have different callings. Not everyone's called to go to the rainforest,
I guess I align myself kind of with the evangelizing because I'm not really trying to convert anyone, but I am saying that participation is a miracle, actually, and it's the difference between saying no or not saying no. Basically, I'm not even saying say yes, because I think participation and connection are natural, and just if you stop saying no, it seems that I'm thrown into more activities with my fellow man, and
wow.
And it's really not an egoic thing to say yes. It's more or less.
Yeah.
It's just it is an egoic thing to say no. And when that starts to melt, yes is just what's left over, or just connection. And but the twist that I put on it is that I liked it when you said call to action, because I think mostly our call to action is urgency. And I don't think that works. And so in that case, it would be better to be in a monastery and not be urgent. Then at least that could be an experiment. What would happen if your call to action wasn't urgency and stress? And it was just love of the other, love and participation, but not the idea of love, but just really the sensing of it, the sensing that it's real, it is there. And then everything would just happen from some kind of a more, maybe not full-blown joy, but something in between, that was contented, and that was I don't know what would be in between there, but not from the stress of seriousness, but more from sincerity.
And I think I guess the ideal is that you're resting. This is the ideal, right? That you're resting in God, you're resting in grace. So you're in heaven, in paradise. So you're here, but you're not here. So you're resting in grace, but fully participating in the world.
Well, as a matter of fact, you're here and you're really here, because the rest of us are here and not here, But those that are really here, and then they trust that this world is okay, and that, and they somehow, it's not just a blind trust, it's just some knowing, they just realize it. They just see it by kind of your attention will see it. Your attention just on this moment will see it, I'm convinced. And when your attention is on descriptions, and many of the descriptions and interpretations are stressful,
it goes back to the question: is it all right now? Doesn't it? It goes back to the question: is it all right now? What you just said is so true. When we're truly here and truly present in this moment, where is the problem? In fact, and the only problem is the one the mind will bring in. Because in my senses now, if I stay in my senses, I'm sitting in this room. There's this PC here, I have a cup of coffee here. What is the problem now?
Well, it's a belief that there's a whole world out there and it's going on, and that it's a belief in objectivism, like everything is an object and everything is separate from me and it's all doing its thing. And separate from me, there's a lot of things going to hell. And somehow I can hide here and and it's still happening, right? And then that ignores my participation in driving everything to hell by worry and by action that comes from a worried call to action. Something about that.
I mean, we know all these things are happening in the world. We know that these things are happening.
Well, I don't know if we know it, but I mean, we believe it.
We believe it. We read it in the news.
It's hard to say that. It's hard to say that because if we say that right away, it sounds like we're really unattached, like we're totally blind to something is happening, right? Or isn't it? I don't know, but
where I live in the town centre, right, we have lots of drunks come by in the early hours of the morning. And so you're going to sleep, and these guys wake us up, and we don't like them. So we know that's happening when it happens. And perhaps we need to take action and try and close the pubs or something, or there's too much drinking going on for too many long hours. And perhaps I need to do my bit of action to see, well, can I change things instead of just moaning about it. But in this moment now, meditation is only about this moment and being informed by this moment. And this moment is where the body is. And so the question, is it all right now? It's only for this moment. And perhaps if we're informed by this, and I've used this with practical effect. I did this at my father's funeral. I took his funeral pretty much so, which was a surprise to me on the day. And there was my dad's coffin here, and I loved my dad. I adored my dad. And there were the flowers on his coffin. This was the audience that I was going to give this little talk. And I'm looking, and it's cold in the church, freezing cold. And I'd had flu. I'd passed out 2 days before. And I'm standing there, and to myself, I say, "Is it all right now?" And I look, and there's a coffin, and there are the flowers on the coffin, in the church, and the people there looking at me expectantly. It's all right. And it was very beautiful. And I gave a little talk. And when it came to the vicar's turn to give his thing, he said, I can't follow that. And this came through prayer. I pray, I believe in God, and whatever you think God is. So I pray and I practice to get me through these moments, just being present. And I find it's the best way of dealing with the future, inverted commas. By being here now is the best way to deal with that event when it comes. Be here now. I bet you've heard that before.
What could be very, I would really say it would be a real interesting challenge, because I was very perked up my interest when you said, okay, so men have a lot of anger stored in their psoas or in their trigger point,
Yeah.
And then you actually said that so many people don't want to give that up. They just don't want to release it.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
So
that's probably me as well. That's us as well, to whatever degree we're holding on to something.
Wouldn't it be great to, that would be like the investigation of the century, to look at, see what does it take to release that? Not that you could force it, but somehow, I mean, that is really like the whole human condition right there, isn't it?
I was treating, yes, Richard, I was treating a Sikh chap. And I was amazed treating him, because his body was truly in let go. And he tells me he meditates every day, and he does a sort of hour's meditation in the morning, or I think half an hour or something. But his body was really in let go. And it's very unusual. My Tai Chi teacher, Andrew Austin, I've been training with for 16 years now. He's a Tai Chi master. He's a Chinese master of martial art. He's a master of Chinese martial arts. When I've treated him, he has very little resistance in his body. Very little resistance. And you said about saying yes to life. And Andrew really, it seems that he is saying yes to life much of the time. Just yes to whatever's arising. I'll give you a beautiful example. He just bought a new car, a lovely new car. I can't remember what it was called. And he was staying over a friend's house in Swindon. He comes down from Portsmouth. And my friend is a Kung Fu guy. He's very, very good at Kung Fu. He's very fiery. He's not really a close friend, but someone I kind of know. And they both witnessed these thugs go by with keys, and they keyed Andrew's new car. So they put the key right along the car. And my friend was so fired up, he said, "Right, I'm going to go and get them, Andrew." And Andrew said, "No, it's okay. It's only a car." And he's only a young man, but he has this extraordinary wisdom, because he could see the consequences of that guy's delivering what he was going to deliver. There'd be a court case, perhaps someone would get killed or whatever, just over this car. And he has this extraordinary perspective, and he can really see the other person's point of view. So tremendous teacher. He's only a young man, but I'm learning so much from him about true humility as well. And I hear people, they study with teachers, and they say, like, yeah, I've been with some guy, and I spent 2 months with him. So, yeah, that's great. But traditionally, you spend forever with your teacher.
So some discovery of mine, I've been discovering that what we react to is our interpretation. We don't we don't really react to what's out there. You know,
Right.
again, we were saying, okay, there's so many things. We believe that there's so many things happening out there, and we have to become adequate to all that stuff. And we believe everything is its own object, and since it's an object, it's got boundaries, and it's separate from another object, and therefore separate from me, and I'm separate from them. And these are all the beliefs, you know, that and the appearance too. And I'm saying that we're not really reacting to all that. What we're reacting to is how we story that or how we interpret it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and
yeah, absolutely.
the justice spin we put on it, it's not right like this. It should be different, or it could be better, or any one of those levels of decisions and discussions. And the way we can do that, understand that some, is by finding some things in our life that are soft enough that we can change the story and accept it. You know, if you've got a cancer, you can't say, well, that's not a cancer. You can't just arbitrarily change the story, you know. But I mean, or some things you can, though. Some things where you see that it's not that pressing on you. I mean, I even restoried a divorce saying she left me, and then I just said, no, she's free and so am I. And I restoried that, and it was a
Wow,
total different feeling, you know. Total
wow,
different. And I mean, I proceeded in my life just like with a great positivity, because she's free and so am I. And my freedom
right.
was a tool or a pivot point that I could work off of, and a giant launch happened, both for her and
Yeah,
me. You know, and it could have, and on so many divorces are painful for 5, 6, 7 years, and trying to
yeah, yeah, or forever.
rip people's guts out, you know, and say,
Yeah,
I'll take the house, you know, and I'll take this away
yeah,
from
yeah,
her, and I'll do this,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And so then you can find things where you can restore it. Okay, so then that trigger point in the SOAS is a story. Now, while you're working it, can you find that story? And
You can
can,
release,
yeah,
you can release stuff. And if the person doesn't own up their anger, if the person can't own their anger, what they do, they project it out on you, which is the worst, which is horrible. So the anger will start to come out for them to own. This is my anger. Yeah. But what we do with anger, we tend to throw it out on somebody else and blame them for it. And so the uncovering of that, in the uncovering of that anger, there's very often the blame of the person who's uncovered it.
are you saying as a therapist you'll get blasted too?
Yeah, you get blasted, and unless the person is owning it, can own that stuff. If that person is a person who is just always pointing the finger, always looking outside to blame, and can't be responsible for their own process or whatever it is that's going on in them, then it's quite dangerous in that sense for the therapist, because they just blame the therapist. And some people go from one therapist to the other, and they haven't got a good word to say about any of them.
Okay,
Same with gurus.
let me
Yeah,
say that that's one stage of it, you know, because
yeah,
like it's either his or it's mine, you know. But there's
right.
another stage where there is no him and there's no me either, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not mine, you
That's
know.
well,
And
that's
anyhow,
right.
it
Yeah,
comes from wherever it comes from. It
yeah,
wasn't theirs either. See,
yeah, yeah,
non-personalizing
yeah.
is so
That's
powerful.
nice. That's very nice.
Non-personalizing, and when you can
Yeah,
find a story that creates that
yeah.
anger, and you can undo that story or rejigger it,
Yeah,
and then it doesn't even exist, you know.
there,
Now that's what
there's
I'm
a solution.
suggesting. That's what I'm
Yeah,
suggesting.
that's a great idea, and there's a solution. With some people, it can really work beautifully, like a miracle. It can dissolve. Yeah. So, but anger is very, very. It's a very deceptive emotion. It's a very deceptive emotion. Most people feel wholly, myself included, feel wholly justified in their anger, and it's never questioned. Rather than just being seen as an energy, this is the I'm angry because you did this. We know the story and all those stories, but you're saying about changing that,
Changing the story, you know, because
changing that story,
so many,
dissolving.
so many of much of my anger is gone. There's still a lot of
Yeah.
it around, you know,
Oh,
but I
that's
mean,
great.
so much of it is gone on a personal thing. I used to be just angry about not being able to be in tight clothing, you know. and I'd want to rip it off. I mean, I would have anger
Right.
about the simplest thing,
Right.
and now I have anger about things that seem arbitrary, where people just arbitrarily hurt others. It seems like that hurts. I don't know how to restory that, but I mean, a lot of anger I've restoried, and it doesn't show up anymore.
Yeah, that's lovely. I mean, the Course in Miracles says, doesn't it? I'm never upset for the reason I think, which is I'm never upset for the story I speak, for the story I tell, for the yarn that I'm spinning. That's not the real reason.
Maybe there is no reason. I mean, you can carry that farther. It sounds like, okay, I got the wrong reason and there is a right reason. But maybe there is,
Well, that's
each
right.
reason has its own reaction, because I'm saying we react to our stories. We don't react to any real thing out there, And so then you can carry that farther and farther and farther until we have when we have no story, we have no reaction.
There's no reason to be angry. Ever. Wouldn't that be extraordinary? But I mean, recently in Swindon, some poor girl got murdered, and the murderer was going away in an ambulance, police van, and people were throwing things and banging the police van. And I'm not saying, to me, it was the universe saying to him, wake up, wake up, wake up. But I'm also seeing that, they have the same violence that he had in what they want to do to him. And I'm not saying I would be any different either. So anger consumes us, can consume us very, very quickly, can't it? Very, very quickly. It comes up and strikes very rapidly.
Very, very, very quickly, because like I'm at a point where I can't even watch the movies, because I'll just freak out. I can't watch manipulated emotions and manipulated justice scenarios and stuff like that aren't real, because I don't know. I just then I think like, and I see the reaction in me that's so strong, and then I feel like turning it on whoever made that movie,
Yeah, I
Nail
get
that
the same.
dude.
I get the same feeling. We have a program over here called EastEnders, and no disrespect to people who like EastEnders, if anyone's watching and likes it. But I was interviewed. Well, I met a BBC person in the town centre, and they were doing an interview for the radio, and they said, "Would you say a few things about EastEnders now being shown 7 times a week?" This is going back a few years ago, and I said, "Well, I think the screenwriters should be lined up and shot." Because it's that kind of thing, very negative. Everything is very negative. It's always it's displaying the worst possible human behavior. And as the Bible says, without vision, the people perish. So if we're watching stuff like that all the time, it's just dragging us down. And people copy it. Young boys copy how footballers behave badly. They copy it. And all this theatrics, they copy. And we do imitate art. Life imitates art.
Yeah, imitation is like one of the main ways of learning.
Yeah.
An imitation can be taken in one way. It's just like conscious, like monkey see, monkey do. But in another way, it's unconscious. It's like a reflection of the vibe. It's a reflection of the anxiety level. It's a reflection of the peace and the we reflect that, or we mirror it. Well, that's reflect, same word, I guess. But right. So then, I mean, even that, I suppose you can restore, because sometimes it just takes a huge exaggeration to really see the light, and then all of a sudden you just see it. But I mean, I also resent myself people that make money on being non-life affirmative.
Yeah.
If that they make that their livelihood. It seems like I'd rather make my livelihood being life affirmative somehow.
Yeah. I mean, we have these guys around here driving really fast and things, and it's very dangerous for the community. And you have these films glamorizing young people driving fast in cars. And I don't think that's good. I don't think it does anyone any favors. I don't think it does society any favors, and particularly from America. And you have these very violent movies, disaster movies. I mean, for goodness sakes.
I actually have a dream, and I don't think it'll happen in reality, but I wanted to make a movie out of it. And somehow, without going into a lot of detail and stuff, I'd just say that there would be a connection tied between that movies actually do force behavior. Now, in America at least, if you convince someone to kill someone, you're also liable for murder. So then I have this dream of making a movie that portrays the movies in court as responsible for certain things, and then all of a sudden everybody gets on the bandwagon and starts suing these movie houses, and then they all go broke and they're totally gone.
Yeah.
This is my dream movie.
Let's bring them down.
Yeah, right.
They've made enough people suffer long enough.
Yeah,
Let's bring them down.
I think that would be the best movie that I would love. But I mean, who knows? Society could demand something, a responsibility, right?
Yeah. Well, you hear when, like in the Second World War, at theaters and on TV, so much of the stuff was jollying people up, making them feel a bit better. But so much of the time now, so many of the TV programs, it's all a downward spiral. It's all about, and particularly the media. The media, to me, when I go if I'm ever on the media, it's like entering Satan's court. And there's a feeling to it which I don't like, and it makes me feel frightened. It's like entering Satan's domain. And they're perhaps some of the most irresponsible people on planet Earth, pretending to be the most responsible. I'm not saying all journalists are like that, because they're not. Clearly, evidently not. But so much of journalism, what I see on TV, I really don't like. And I don't like to see them. I think to me, they come across as very arrogant. And they're all airbrushed. Well, they're all so done up, They're the king. They're like these demigods, sitting on their sofas and worshipping themselves. And I don't like to see them.
Yeah, me neither. So I turn them off. But anyhow, everybody doesn't take that choice. You know? I don't know. But that's the main part of freedom, that we always have the off button.
Yeah, well, I live with my partner, Kathy, and she likes to watch the news in the morning, and I'll say, "Do you have to?" And she'll turn it on for a while, and and sometimes I accept it, and I'm in that acceptance place that we talk about, and it's okay. And so sometimes it's going back to interpretation, it's my interpretation of them, and my judgment of them. Are somehow different from me.
Exactly, spot on. That's you and me. That's what we're working through now. Our judgments of what we call life negative behavior. We're judging that,
Yeah, and the saying, when fighting demons, be careful not to become one. And and what one meditates on, one becomes. So if I'm meditating on that, or meditating on the thugs, I'm perhaps becoming that. I'm becoming at one with that type of energy, and perhaps not even realizing it.
Okay, now let's see. Now, what you'll do is release a few SOASs before our next talk, and we'll get a report on how the whole world can give up what they don't want to give up, right?
Yeah.
And we won't just say that. We won't just say that it's a mission impossible, that people don't want to give up.
Yeah.
And then, what's my job? You could give me a job too.
Well, the Course in Miracles says in the healing. From a pamphlet from the Course in Miracles, it says healing occurs when the therapist forgets to judge the patient. And most of us are judging and saying, "There's this wrong with you." There's something wrong with you. And we're telling them there's something wrong. We're affirming there's something wrong. In the Urantia book, the book of Urantia, there's a story about Jesus. I don't know if it's true or not. And it's a story of when he meets this guy who's demon possessed. And in the scriptures, you would hear that he cast out the demons. But in this story, I'm going to use some poetic license. He put his hand on the guy's shoulder and said, look, you're not demon possessed. And the guy got up and he was in his right mind. Perhaps that's healing.
See, that brings us right back to the beginning of our conversation when we said not knowing is beauty. And our knowledge is like the root of the condition of man, probably.
The root of all evil.
Yeah, we could call it evil,
They
but that's knowing too. That's knowing too,
Yeah, they bit the apple of the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowing something. I know what it's about, And I was speaking to a therapist a little while ago, and I said, really, we're all just groping in the dark. And she didn't like that. Because she thought it was a very negative statement.
We're all lost, in other words, she thought it meant.
Yeah, we don't. It's going back to this not knowing. And if we're coming from this idea that I know better than you, sometimes they say with Ramakrishna, he would give a talk, and one day he would give a talk to these people, and other days he would look at them. He would be unable to give the talk because he would see that they're already that. They're already okay as they are. And other times I will do something and I will think, no, I've got something to share. I have some wisdom to impart to these poor souls. And other times I think, what have I got to impart?
Well, groping in the dark or living in the mystery, maybe. I mean, there can be no judgment there because we can't bequeath anyone with a condition because we just don't know.
We don't know. We don't know how that worm came to be. And these words are just coming from nowhere. You and I are just talking away and like friends who've never met, and we're just flowing like, perhaps there's a little bit of correction here and there, but we seem to be getting on fire, and it's flowing from the heart, from friendship, from love. And it's not planned. Isn't that lovely? That nothing I'm saying has been planned. Nothing you're saying has been planned. And we live in a world where everything has to be planned, where everyone has to have their script. We have to abide by our script, or just make sure mine's a Baptist Christian script. I've got to abide by that. Or it's a Hindu script, so we have to speak in Advaita type speak. And then we're all right, because we're in the Advaita club. But we're not in the Advaita club. We don't know what that means. It means non-dual. We don't know. This is a foreign religion, some foreign belief. What do we really know? And I guess this is, in a sense, this is Advaita there, isn't it? This is non-dual. Somehow, the non-dual is coming through and just pointing out this duality that we're talking about of myself and the media that are separate from me. Myself and the other therapists that are separate from me. Myself and you and the patient that is separate from me. And so it's very much a duality. So we're in a sense, we're pointing to non-duality, but we're also very much pointing to duality. But I guess this is the play, isn't it? This is the dance. Or this is it's experience. This is our experience. I'm interested in our experience. So when I go out and leave this house, as I will in 20 minutes or so, I'm interested in the experience, the actual experience of walking up that hill to teach my class. I could speak of peace and having had great peace and knowing great peace and great contentment. But what does that mean when I'm outside that door? What is my experience? My experience is vulnerability, perhaps in some enjoyment of the senses, usually a sense of separation. There's a sense of separation from the people who pass me by. Occasionally there might be some kind of feeling of oneness. It's easier to feel oneness with nature, more difficult with each other. But it's nice if we could just come out from this stance of being a satsang teacher or being a guru and just be ordinary human beings and just speak from that. Dare to be an ordinary human being, exposed, naked, not pretending to be anybody in particular. And we can take up pretense if we need to. Pretense has a certain function in the business world, but we don't have to be constantly pretending. Who for? Who are we playing for? It's nice not to be on stage. It's good to be on stage, but it's nice to come into the wings once in a while. And I think, I have a sense, Richard, that human beings are thirsting for the real, and they're thirsting to be who they truly are, not pretending to be a satsang guru. I'm not saying all satsang teachers are pretending, by the way, either, but I'm saying there is that temptation. And let's just let that all go. Let's let it all go and dare just to be whoever we are in each moment.
Well, we all take up our roles. And maybe we take them seriously, and we come out of knowing. And we're suggesting that maybe coming out of mystery is not knowing, not even knowing about our role, and sure, being fully capable of fulfilling that role for those who have expectations around us, but not getting lost in it.
Yeah. I think this is the problem, getting lost in the role. The role has a function. It is a function. So, and then we come home, then there's the function of making a meal or the function of having a bath. And I don't have to do that role anymore. But I really wonder how many gurus out there have trapped themselves and allowed themselves to be trapped. And their stages get higher and higher. Their chairs get bigger and bigger. They get further and further away from the people. They get more and more elevated and bigged up.
Well, it just happens like guys that, for a while you could talk to everyone, and then 100 people a day want to talk to you. And you there's no room for a life, there's no room for a life. True. Then 1,000 people a day want to talk to you. And somehow they build, your friends build a structure, a foundation, and they build a protocol around you. And then it's true that you take on a kind of a look from outside that you are. But I mean, I would rather just say that instead of saying satsang guru, just say everybody is taking their role too seriously. Or getting lost in it. Better. We don't have to really talk about teachers of anything. Yeah. We're all a teacher because we're all trying to say that what I know is right. And why don't you listen to me?
Absolutely.
On our level,
And this
maybe
goes
just
back
with
to
one other person, who knows, but we're trying to convince someone that, hey, accept my views.
The Course in Miracles says, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? I want to be right and happy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Happy for me. I'm always happy when I'm right, I noticed that, right? I don't know. Yeah. Just to leave space we're talking about and then investigate our stories because, that's what I'm finding anyhow. I like to share that what we react to is our story or our interpretation. And so then just check it out, is that the one you want?
Yeah. I think I can see with my some people I train with that over the years, there seems to be less pretentiousness. And there seems to be less of that story that we were carrying with us, and more of a sense of emptiness, and more of an intimacy, really, and a more of a willingness to take that mask off. And but that was over a long period of time.
Well, that's a real blessing to have a relationship like that. And actually, I guess that's what we're modeling right now. I mean, we're saying, okay, all you guys out there, have more of an emptiness and try it out on some relationships and just let everyone be themselves or whatever they think they are, and try that on for size, see how that works.
And my teacher is great at that. He allows everyone to be themselves, and no matter how big the ego, he gives it room, he lets it be. And he might playfully poke at it here and there, but he lets it be. And over a period of time, the ego falls over anyway. It just falls over itself anyway. But he has this immense patience.
So let that be our message today. It happens in the world, and those people that have that patience, they seem to be well adjusted.
Yeah.
Graham, I truly thank you.
Thank you, Richard. It's been great. Thank you very much.
Now you've discovered my addiction.
Yeah, mine too.
Talking with you.
Mine too. Yeah. Well, it's great to share these things because so often the door is closed. Sometimes when I speak to people publicly, there's a visceral no in the room. And you can't speak. And it's like one's mouth is just... And so one shouldn't speak in that room. Otherwise it becomes preaching. It becomes fighting.
Maybe you can just confront it. You can confront it and say, like, okay, let's say there's a visceral no. What would it feel like, And let's say there's an openness. What would that feel like? And you can just go right at that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I remember I gave a talk to a women's institute on meditation and relaxation about 12, 13 years ago or longer. And I said that I was a bit more I wasn't quite as gentle then as I am now. And I said everyone does exactly what they want to do. Oh, they hated me so much. And they were almost shouting at me towards the end of the talk. And I was lucky to get out of there in one piece.
Yeah, you're delivering a message. Right. I guess you got to start out soft and see how much they can take,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you learn through it with experience, over the years, with experience, perhaps you find that this is a better way of doing things, And we have a thing called push hands in Tai Chi, where it's a form of sparring at some level, but another level is a form of just sensitizing oneself to the other person. And instead of fighting against them, working with them, working together. And most of us are fighting against each other at some level.
That's an amazing skill, is feeling boundaries, feeling whether they're natural or artificial, but somehow feeling them and just caressing them and working with them and pushing hands with boundaries, and just seeing, how is that,
Yeah.
And then I'm totally for talking to people that are not really in the club, people that just don't know, and seeing if this language can't broaden.
Yeah.
And by doing that dance with the boundaries and seeing what is needed to say that life is actually pretty smooth if you let it.
Yeah.
So this has been most enjoyable.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll become fast friends.
Oh, let's hope so. Yeah.
So, Graham Pritchard.
Richard Miller.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for coming and watching. Tell your friends. We'll put another one on if you like it. And bye for now.
Cheers, Pritchard. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Cheers, Anne.